Alright, so this is test 8 of the McGraw-Hill 10 ACT practice tests. So, question 1. Absolute value of 9 minus 5 minus absolute 5 minus 9. So 9 minus 5 is 4, absolute of that is 4. 5 minus 9 is negative 4 in absolute values, so that's going to equal to 4. Notice we still have the minus in the middle. 4 minus 4 is 0. Okay. An editor charges $30 per hour, so $30 each hour. Notice the unit is a fraction. Okay. Plus a flat fee of $25. How many hours were included? Okay, so we need to multiply here by X hours. Okay, so that these both have dollars in them. Okay, hours will cancel. So you get 30x, which has units of dollars, and 25 has units of dollars. Okay, for a project that the bill was $190. Okay, so we just have to solve this for x. So we can drop the units now that we set it up. But you notice that each and every item in an equation like this has to have dollars. That is to say, each term. Okay. But anyway, we can solve for x by subtracting 25. Right. So we get 30x equals 165, and then divide that by 30. All right. So we can grab our calculators. So 165 divided by 30. And that will give us 5.5. Runner A averages 5 miles per hour. Okay. Runner B 6 miles per hour. At these rates, how much longer does it take runner A than runner B to run 15 miles? Okay. So to figure out how much time it takes, for example, for A to go, you have to look at the numbers that you have and their units. 5 miles per hour, and you want to go 15 miles. So you can kind of do a proportion here. If it's 5 miles in 1 hour, all right, if you're doing 15 miles, that's x hours, right? So you can cross multiply. 5x is 15, so x is 3, right? 3 hours. Now you can do the same thing with the other guy, except for his number up top is 6, right? So you get 6x equals 15, divide by 6, and you will find x is 15 over 6. Which, when you do a division, well, you can actually do it in your calculator, is the simplest way. So you do 15 over 6, and you get 2.5. So what is the difference in time? It looks like 0.5 hours, right? Whoops. Choice A. Alright. So let's see here. Looks like we just have to combine like terms. Starting with the x squared terms, we've got negative 81, right? Then with the x terms, we got 60 minus 59 is plus x. Good. The figure below is composed of square and equilateral triangle. What length of line segment AE is 18? All right. What is the perimeter? So it's a square, which means it's equal on all sides. So you got 18 on every side. And here you have an equilateral triangle, so it's also 18 on every side. And we want to know the perimeter, so how many 18s are we dealing with? Well, remember that this dotted line does not count. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 18s. So what's 18 times 5? We get 40. Okay, 90. All right. So here we have to FOIL, or in other words, double distribute. So 6n times n gives you 6n squared. Okay. 6n times 4 is 24n. Alright, then the inner gives you minus 5n, and the last gives you minus 20. So you get 6n squared with a minus 20, and in the middle you get a, what is that, 19n? Positive. Blair expects a 3% increase. What would her new salary be? Well, here's where multipliers really shine, okay? So you do 1.03. Okay? You always start with 1 when you do multipliers, and you either add or subtract the decimal equivalent. So the decimal equivalent here would be 0.03, and we're adding it because it's a percent increase. 42,000 times 1.03. So grab the calculator, 42,000 times 1.03. We get 43,260. Alright, these consecutive integers add up to 513. What's the value of n? So we add these columns, we will get 6n, and then the 2 and minus 2 cancel along with the 1 and minus 1. This has to equal 513. Subtract 3 from both sides, and you get 510, right? Then you divide by 6 on both sides. So we do 510 divided by 6, 85. The standard xy coordinate plane, point B has coordinates 5, 6, is the midpoint of AC. Alright? So you don't even need to draw a coordinate plane. Just can draw a line, pretend like it's a line. So here's A, here's C, here's your midpoint. Okay, so 5, 6 is your midpoint, and point A has coordinates 6, 7. So we have to find what the coordinates are for for C, right? So we just have to look at what the difference is and then copy that once more. So we went down 1 in the x coordinate, so we'll go down 1 again. We went down 1 in the y coordinate, we'll go down 1 again. So we end up with choice C. Rectangle PQRS lies in the standard xy coordinate plane so that its sides are not parallel to the axes. Alright, so it might look like that, roughly. What is the product of the slopes of all 4 sides? Okay, so this is one of those questions where I've allowed a little bit of freedom on what I can do. So what I'll do is I'll make the first side have a slope of 1. So this is along the line y equals x. Now there's going to be another side that's parallel to that, so it's also going to have a slope of 1, right? Now this side has got to be perpendicular to the side that I already drawn. Well, to do perpendicular you have to do a negative reciprocal of the slope. So I flip and negate, I get negative 1. Same thing for this, negative 1. If I multiply those 4 things together, I end up with 1 as my product. Okay? If Tom that's a hard question, by the way. If Tom traveled 45 miles in 12 hours, we can express that this way. Jim traveled 4 times as far. So 45 times 4 in 1/3 the time. 12 divided by 3. What was his speed in miles per hour? Okay. So 12 divided by 3, by the way, is 4. Right? These 4's cancel. You get 45. Given the triangle below with exterior angles, what is the sum of A, B, and C? The sum of exterior angles is always 360. So that's an easy one. If you didn't know that, you could find whatever's left here when you take away from 180. Okay? And then sort of just do 180 minus everything. Okay, what percent of the students polled chose Spartans in the poll? Well, 30 students out of, looks like 200 total. So what percent is that? Well, to convert it to a percent, remember percent means out of 100. So we can make it this little proportion here. So divide by 2, you get 15%. Now, if you didn't know that little trick there, right, where you divide by 2 on top and bottom, you could also cross multiply, moving the 100 over here. But if you didn't know even how to set that up, there's another easy way you can solve it. Just use your calculator. Right, 30 over 200. And then, so 0.15 is your decimal, so that corresponds to 15%. Right? If the information in the table will convert it to a pie chart, okay, so pie chart, you have to remember pie chart is always out of 360. Okay. So, what would be the measure of the central angle for the lions? Lions was 40 out of 200. So this is just like the question above where we did it out of 100, except for this time we're doing it out of 360. Okay. So you can cross multiply, moving the 360 that way. All right. Then this 0 cancels and this 0 cancels. So let's erase those. So you get 4 over 2, which is 2. 2 times 36 is 72. If the poll is indicative of how 3,000 students will actually vote, which of the following is the best estimate of the number of votes the Knights will receive? So what was the nights? Was 50. That's 50 out of 200 students, right? This can be reduced. The zeros cancel. 5 out of 20. 20 is really 5 times 4, isn't it? The 5's cancel, you get 1/4. So 1/4 of the students voted for the nights. So if we have 3,000 total students, we'd want to find what is 1/4 of 3,000. And we remember that of means times. So this is really 3,000 over 4, so you half it twice. 1,500, 750. Total surface area of the solid shown below is the sum of the 6 sides. What is the total surface area? Okay. So here, right, we got the front side here is 3 by 4. So that's got an area of 12. That's the front. But of course, the back would also have an area of 12. Now, if we look at the, let's say, right-hand side, okay, the right-hand side has got a depth of 4 with a height of 3. So that has an area of 12. And so does the left have an area of 12. So now we have to just look at the top. So the top, which dimensions would be involved? Well, this depth dimension would be involved. That's a 4. And so would this width, which is also a 4. Okay, so that would be a 16 for top and also for bottom. Right? So here you've got 24 with 32. So 8, 10, and 3, 5, 8. Which of the following is the slope of a line parallel to this? So this slope has got a 2/5 slope. Anything that's parallel means it's going to have the same slope, right? Because it's going to be pitched by the same direction. So the slope is going to be 2/5. Circular lamp base has a radius of 2.5 inches. When placed on a flat table, approximately how much area does that base cover? So we want the area of that circle. So we know the formula is pi r squared. If you don't know that, then you should. You should memorize it. The circumference is 2 pi radius. All right. 2.5 plugging in here, squaring that will give you 6.25. If you don't know that, use your calculator. Times pi. So let's see what that comes out to. 6.25 times pi. 19 point something, right? What is the largest integer less than radical 42? So rad 42, we know that's got to be in between 36 and 49. And we should know that that's 6 and 7, right? So this is a number that's in between 6 and 7. So if we want an integer that's less, we would choose 6. Amanda plans to paint the 4 walls of her bedroom with 1 coat of paint. The walls are rectangular and measure 12 by 4. 12 by 14, that is. She will not paint either the 3 by 4 foot rectangular window or this 3 by 7 foot door. Okay. Alright, so what we do is we find the total area here, okay, by multiplying those numbers together, 14 times 12. That gives you 168, right? So that's the total area, but then part of it she's not painting, so we can subtract that part away. So first of all, there's a 3 by 4 window, which is 3 times 4 is just 12. And we also should subtract for the door, which is 3 by 7, so that's 21. Okay. She knows that each gallon of paint covers between 350 and 400 feet. If 1 gallon, okay. How many walls does she have? She has 4 walls on her bedroom. Okay. So before I subtract this amount, I've got to multiply this amount for the wall by 4, because she has 4 walls. So I'll times that by 4. And then by hand I'll take away the 12 that's for the window, and I'll also take away the 21 that's for the door. Alright, so I get 639. 639 is the total amount that she has to paint. Now the question is, how many cans of paint does she need to buy, right? So it looks like she's going to need to buy 2 gallons of paint, alright, because at the minimum they will do 350 square feet a can. So if I have 2 cans, that would double that. That would be 700 square feet. And so that would be enough to do the 639 square feet that she needs doing. Okay. This expression equals, well, these 3's cancel, and these x's subtract to give you x to the minus 6 power, 3 minus 9. Okay. What values of a are solutions for this? Okay, so the first thing you do is, whenever you have a quadratic, you want everything on the same side. Minus 8 equals 0. Now we would factor this. Okay. So trinomial factoring here. Add, multiply. Right? You can drop this first sign down, always drops down into this, and then this tells you that the signs are different, seeing as it's minus. So the first sign was plus, this should be minus. Right? If that sign was plus, then both signs would be the same. Now we're looking for factors of 8. Okay, so 1 and 8 and 2 and 4. We want the one that either adds or subtracts to 2. So we're going to grab this group. Always the bigger number goes first, and then we can t-chart. So you take the opposite, you get negative 4. You take the opposite, you get positive 2. Right? So choice K. The square graph below, what is the slope of line segment AC? Alright, so it looks like it's going to have a slope of 1, but if I didn't know that, then I could do a change in y over change in x. So the change in y goes up by 8, and the change in x also goes up by 8, which equals 1. The fixed costs of printing a certain textbook are $900 per week. The variable costs are $1.50 per textbook, so I times that by X number of textbooks. Which of the following expresses for 1 week? T textbooks, right? So it would just be my same thing except T instead of X. So, oh, sorry, choice K. Figure shown below, the perimeter is this. What's the value of X? Alright, it's going to be 5. You can see like the 5 rad 3 already sort of peeking out here. But if you didn't know that, let's see how to do it the long way. Alright, so the first thing you do is you use these to find the third side. Right? Pythagorean Theorem, x squared plus x rad 3 squared equals c squared. So you get x squared plus, you square each item here. Rad 3 squared is 3. So you get 3x squared. Now you've got 1x squared and 3x squared, that's 4x squared. And then you square root both sides. So you get c equals square root of 4 is 2, square root of x squared is x. C equals 2x. Alright, so now that we have that, let's just erase this. Okay. So from here, we want that all to add up to this. So we have sort of x plus 2x plus x rad 3 has to equal 15 plus 5 rad 3. So that's 3x plus x rad 3 equals 15 plus 5 rad 3. So now you can see that the like terms are going to equal each other. So x rad 3 would have to equal 5 rad 3. So of course x would have to equal 5. And similarly 3x would have to equal 15. And if you divide that, you get x equals 5 as well. So alright, what is y? Well, one thing you could do right away is swipe these guys out. And then you could you have 1 over, so you can then flip both sides. So you get this equals 11. Let me just make it a little neater. Then you could divide by radical 11. Okay, so you find y equals this. Now this is not a choice. Alright, just make it a little neater. It's not a choice because we have an irrational denominator, so we have to rationalize it. So we multiply it by this on top and bottom. Okay, so we get 11 radical 11 over 11. Now these 11s will cancel, giving you choice G. Casey has buckets of 3 different sizes. The total capacity of 12 buckets is G gallons. The total capacity of 8 buckets of the other size is G gallons. What is the total capacity of 4 buckets? Alright. So, a lot going on here. In terms of G, alright, what is the capacity of each of the smallest size? Alright, so we only need one of those, the smallest one. So there's 3 different ones. Obviously the middle one, right, the one with 8 buckets, that's not going to be the smallest. So it's either the 12 buckets or the 4 buckets is going to be the smallest. And I claim it's the one with the 12 buckets. Because if you had, say, a gallon of soda, if you required 12 buckets to hold that gallon versus 4 buckets, right, then it must be the case that the one that required the 12 buckets, the buckets must have been very small, right? So anyway, 12 buckets can hold G gallons. So we want the capacity in gallons, really it should be in gallons per bucket, okay? So we have to flip this guy over. So we get G gallons per 12 buckets. Choice A. What is the area of a circle that has a circumference of 0.5 pi? Okay. So circumference we know is pi times diameter. So using that idea, we can substitute this in for C. So d pi is equal to 0.5 pi. Now divide by pi both sides, it will cancel. So you get diameter is 0.5. And of course diameter is equal to 2 times r, so we can plug that in here. So 2r is 0.5, divide by 2, and you get r is equal to half of 0.5, which is 0.25. Okay. So now that we have the radius, we can use our pi r squared formula, plugging this in for r. So we just have to use our calculator here. We don't really need to, but let's just pretend we do. So pi times 0.25 squared. 0.196. Oh, it's in terms of pi, so that's even easier, right? So we just need to do 0.25 squared, 0.0625 pi. Cube X has edge length of 2 inches. Alright, so that you can right away find the volume of it would be 2 times 2 times 2, so that would be 8. Cube Y has an edge length triple that of cube X. So this is cube X, this is cube Y. So cube Y has a side length triple. So triple of 2 is 6. So the volume here would be 6 times 6 times 6, which is 216. And that happens to be what they're asking for. Formula used to compute the current value is this. Okay, so this is our normal interest formula. Alright. Which of the following is the closest value of an investment 3 years if $8,000 is deposited with 5% annual interest? Okay, so amount equals the principal, which is 8,000, times 1, basically the multiplier, which would be 1.05, right? Because 5% decimal equivalent is 0.05. Tack that onto 1, and we do that 3 years, right? Calculator. So 8,000 times 1.05 to the third, 9261. Right circular cylinder is shown below with dimensions given in inches. Which is the total surface area of the cylinder in square inches? Okay. Surface area is 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. Alright, that's given. So we know the radius equals 1 and the height is 3, so we just plug in 2 pi 1 squared plus 2 pi 1 3. So here we get 6 pi, here we get 2 pi, so that's going to give 8 pi total. Alright, given f of x equals this, g of x equals this, what is f of g of x? So notice that g of x is sitting inside of f. So we have to take the entire thing of g of x and plug it in as an input into the function f. x squared minus x plus 7 plus 5. Distribute this 3. 3x squared minus 3x plus 21 plus 5. So you get 3x squared minus 3x plus 26. Table below shows the total number of touchdowns scored in each of 16 football games during regular season. What is the average number of touchdowns scored per game? Okay, so you want the average number of TDs per game. So you need the total number of touchdowns and the total number of games. This is a frequency table, so it's telling you how many touchdowns in a game and how many games had that total. So you'd have to multiply these, okay? And that will give you your total number of touchdowns in that category. So you've had 5 touchdowns in a game once. That's 5 touchdowns. You've had 4 TDs in a game twice. That makes 8, 15, 6, 3, and 0. So we total this up. You get 20, and 14 is 34, and 3 is 37 touchdowns altogether. How many games altogether do we have? We just sum up this column. 5, 8, 10, 16. So 37 touchdowns in 16 games. We do 37 over 16, and that gives 2.31. In the triangle shown below, what is the average of these angles? Okay, so we know this one is 90, right? So we know that A plus B, that has to equal 90, right? We also know that C plus D plus E has to equal 180. Okay. Now we know our average formula is average equals sum over number. So if we're finding the average, we need the sum. So the sum of these 5 angles would just be A plus B plus C plus D plus E. We have to divide by the number of items, which is 5 items, right? So now here's where the trick comes in. We know that A plus B is really equal to 90, right? And similarly, we know that C plus D plus E is really going to be equal to 180. So this is like a bulk plug-in. So we get 270 over 5. So that's going to be 54. That's choice H. 4x to the fourth, whole thing to the fourth is, so we raise each of these items to the 4th power. So 4 to the 4th power gives you 256. X to the 4th raised to the 4th is a multiplication rule. So we end up with E. Okay, which of the following is equivalent to this? So we solve it. Subtract 3x. Alright, we get 3x there. Subtract 9. Whoops. And so that gives you negative 15 greater than 3x. Divide by 3. And you get x with minus 5. So if you pancake that, put a spatula under it, flip it over, alright, you end up with this. Okay. X is less than negative 5. That's choice G. In the xy coordinate system, alright, so whenever you given a point, you always label it xy, because you're probably going to be plugging that in. Okay. What is the value of m? Alright. So let's see. First thing I'll do is I'll plug in here for x and y. So S is 2 rad 5 squared plus 6. So S is, so rad 5 squared is 5. 5 times 2 is 10. And 10 and 6, of course, is 16. So we learned there that S is equal to 16. Now if we look at our other equation, negative 4x squared plus m, we can again plug in the x and y that were given. But now we know the value of S is really 16. And x we'll use rad 5, okay. Rad 5 squared is 5. 5 times negative 4 is negative 20. Okay. So now we add 20 to both sides. And we get 36 equals m. For right triangle xyz below, what is the cosine of angle z? So the cosine of z Well, cosine from SOHCAHTOA, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So the adjacent side is 3. The hypotenuse is unknown. But if you notice 3, 4 blank, it would have to be 5. So we end up with 3/5. Which of the following statements is not true about this arithmetic sequence? Okay, so arithmetic sequence has a common difference, right? So in this case, it looks like it's -5 each time. Go from one term to the next. So the common difference is -5. We can eliminate that because we're looking for something not true. What would be the next term? We'd -5 from 1, we'd get -4, right? So that is also true for choice A. Let's keep going a couple more terms here. That's the 5th term. So if we subtract 5 again, we get -9. Subtract 5 again, we get -14. So that's our 7th term. So if I did this right, -5, -5, -5. This one is, yeah, not true. If there are this many oxygen molecules in a volume of this many cubic meters, what is the average number of molecules per cubic meter? So this is an easy division problem, okay? 6 times 10 to the 14th divided by 3 times 10 to the 7th. This can all be done in the calculator, but it's also easy to do by hand. 6 over 3 is 2, and then here you have to subtract the exponents. So you get 10 to the power 7. The length of the sides of the triangle are shown in the figure below. What is the cotangent of angle B? Okay, so we're finding the cotangent. So we can start by finding the tangent. So we know that the tangent is going to be opposite over adjacent. And then we know that the cotangent is 1 over the tangent, which means it's flipped over. So then it would really be adjacent over opposite, wouldn't it? So from B's perspective, the adjacent side is x, and the opposite side is the one farther away, which is z. So x over z is the cotangent of B. What rational number is halfway in between of these? So they're also looking for the average, okay? So we add them and then we divide by 2, right? Because average equals sum over number. So we add 1/6 and 1/2. A half is really 3/6. So that makes 4/6. Alright, and we divide that by 2 over 1, which means we multiply by 1/2. So we get 4 over 12, which reduces to 1/3. Okay, 6 minus 2x in absolute value is greater than 9. What's the possible value of x? So we can either plug in the answers or we can solve it out. Let's see how we would solve it. So we start by writing everything except the bars. On the other one, we keep the bar side the same, but then we switch the inequality sign along with the right hand side, making it negative. Now we subtract 6 from both sides, get -2x is greater than 3. Divide by a negative number, we have to switch the inequality sign. It's one of the key differences between inequalities and regular equations. Okay, so that's important. We subtract 6 from both sides, get -2x is less than -15, divide by -2, and again, when we're dividing by a negative, we switch the inequality sign to get 15/2 here. And so now we can put a number line, and just to make things a little bit easier, let's see what these equal in decimal form. So this would be -1.5, and you can use your calculator to find it if you're unsure, but this is 7.5. So let's now plot those numbers on a number line just to get a visual of what's going on. So we want to be less than -1.5, so we're going this way, or greater than 7.5, so we're going this way. Alright. Now, which choice satisfies that? I would say -2. Right, because it's to the left of -1.5. A square and a regular pentagon have equal perimeters. If the pentagon has sides of length 12, what is the area of the square? Okay, so let's see. Square and a regular pentagon. So I can't draw a regular pentagon, but I can draw this kind of pentagon. They have equal perimeters. Okay. If the pentagon has side length 12, so that means all of these sides are going to have length 12. So right away I could find the perimeter by doing 12 times 5. That gives me 60. And therefore the perimeter of my square also has to be 60. But if I call each of these x, because I don't know the side length, perimeter is just going to be 4 times that, right? X plus x plus x plus x is 4x. But I know 4x would have to equal 60, and then I could divide by 4. And so I get 15 for my side length of the square. And then the area of the square, alright, would just have to be side squared. So it would be 15 squared, which happens to be 225. Classroom has 10 tables that will seat up to 4 students each. If 20 students are seated at tables and no tables are empty, what is the greatest possible number of tables that can be filled with students? Okay, so let's see. This one it might be easiest to use the answer choices, right? So let's see. We want the greatest. So whichever greatest answer works, that's what we'll go with. So we may as well try to start at the top with 5. So let's say we have 5 tables that are completely filled with students, right? That would mean 5 times 4 is the capacity of each table, right? So that would make for 20 students that are sat at those tables. And let's see, no tables are empty. Well, this will violate that, right? Because 5 tables that are filled would mean that there are 5 more tables that are empty, because we've already used up all the students, you see. So 5 doesn't work. Let's try 3. If we tried 3 times 4 would give us 12. Alright, so how many students do we have left? We started with 20. We've already sat 12 students, so that means we've got 8 students left. Now how many tables are left? Well, we started with 10 tables. We've used up 3, so we've got 7 tables left. And we've got 8 students left. So can we at least put 1 on each table? I would say we can, right? We can put 1 student on each table, and then one of the table there will be 2 students. So this one works. If x is less than y, then the absolute value of x minus y is equivalent to which of the following? Okay. Well, so this quantity is either going to equal x minus y, or it's going to equal the negative of x minus y. Okay. And what determines which of those it's going to equal is whether or not the inside part comes out to be a negative number. Now if we have x being less than y, let's say 1 versus 3, then we would do 1 minus 3, we'd get a negative answer in here. So when you get a negative answer inside an absolute value, the absolute value negates the entire thing. So we actually come out this side of the split. So that's going to be choice K. Trapezoid below is divided into 2 triangles and 1 rectangle. Lengths are given in centimeters. What is the combined area in square centimeters of the 2 shaded triangles? Okay. Let's see. Well, we know that this length here is going to be 4. Alright. So we know that there's going to be 4 left over for these other bottom pieces. Okay. So we actually don't know if it's 2 and 2 or if it's 3 and 1. We just know that it adds to 4. But we won't lose any generality if we just decide to make it 1 and 3. And I'll explain why later. But for now, let's actually calculate the answers that we get. So 1 times 3 is 3, divided by 2 is 3 halves. Right, because we're doing base height over 2 to find the area of this triangle. So 3 times 1 over 2. And then similarly, we've got here 3 times 3 is 9 over 2. Right? We add those up, and they have already common denominators. So we get 12 over 2, which equals 6. Okay. Now, it's kind of hard to explain as to why that is the case. So another option you can use is actually to find the area of this entire parallelogram and then subtract away the area of the rectangle. So the area formula for a parallelogram is you take the average of the bases times the height. So take the bases, add them together, and divide by 2. That's the average of the bases, and then you multiply that by the height. So you're taking an average of 8 and 4, you get 6. And you multiply that by the height, which is 3. So that gives you 18 for the area of the parallelogram. But now we have to subtract away the area of the rectangle, which is 12, and you get your same 6 that you got before. In the figure below, all line segments are either horizontal or vertical, and the dimensions are given in feet. What is the perimeter of the figure? So whenever you're given a figure like this, which has this rectilinear situation, meaning that it's all right angles, you can actually extend it out to the widest possible net, if you will. Right? So in a way, you're envisioning extending this side out and extending this side up. And then what you have here will have the same perimeter as the original figure. Okay? So it's 8 on this edge, and it's also 8 on the top edge. Right? That 6 is no longer valid if we're going all the way out to the purple. Okay? And now our verticals, this vertical seems to be unknown, but here we have a 2 with a 4, so this vertical is a 6. Therefore this would also be 6. So we have 8, 8, 6, and 6, so that's 14 twice, which is 28. C is directly proportional to S squared. So that means I can set up the following situation. Alright, we can set up a direct proportion. Except for this time, of course, one of the variables is getting squared. When C is 7/16, when S is 1/4, notice I have to square this 1/4 because, again, 1/4 squared. Okay. What is the value of C of S when C is 175? All right. So this is my equation here, and I just have to solve it. Notice that this S is squared, by the way. All right. So we'll start down in this corner here. 1/4 squared is 1/16. Okay. Then I can use keep change flip on this side of the equation. Alright. And these 16s will then cancel, leaving my answer of 7 up in this corner. Then I can move this S squared diagonally across to here. Okay. I can divide by 7, which I'll need the calculator to help me with, most likely. So 175 by 7 is 25. Then we square root both sides and we get S is equal to 5. If the value to the nearest thousandth of cosine of alpha is equal to negative 0.385, which of the following could be true about alpha? Right? So the first thing you notice is that the cosine is negative. So right away, if you know ASTC, you know that you're not in quadrant 1, okay? And you're also not in quadrant 4. Alright? So that may already sort of limit you in your possible answers. But from what I'm seeing here, actually all these values seem to be in the first 2 quadrants, right? So we're not going to be in quadrant, as I said, we're not going to be, sorry, we're expecting to be in quadrant 2, right? Because if we were in the first quadrant, this cosine would not be negative, right? Now the only other thing that makes this a little bit confusing is that all the angle measurements are in radians, right? So we just have to remember that pi radians is equal to 180 degrees, okay? Now, therefore, every time we see pi, we can plug in 180 for that to convert to degrees. So we put a 180 there and there. All right. So 180 over 3 is 60. 60 times 2 is 120. So this is telling me it's between 120 and 180. All right. And well, that it's at least going to be in the right quadrant, okay? Because we want it to be between 90 and 180 for sure, right? This one is 90 and 120. So that's also a possibility because that's also in the second quadrant. Now here we're seeing 90 and 60. So that's the first quadrant. So that's out. And this is 30 and 60, so that's out. This is 0 and 30, so that's out. So we know, of course, we're in one of these two quadrants, or sorry, one of these two regions. Now, the part that we haven't used yet is sort of the number part, right? So when we look at this graph, when we're starting out at 90 degrees here, what is the value of our cosine? What's the cosine of 90? Well, the cosine measures the x component of the projection. So the value of the cosine is going to be 0 when you're in this position, right? And when you get to this position, the cosine is going to be at -1, right? If you don't know that, of course, you can plug it into your calculator. What is the cosine of 90, for example? But anyway, we know that from 0 it's going to gradually approach -1. So the question then becomes, how far along that path are we, right? Because we need to know, like, which half of this quadrant are we in? And it turns out we're in the earlier half, you see, because the absolute value of this number is close to 0. Alright, so we didn't even quite get to a half yet, even though it's not a linear thing, but we can still do it this way. So we know we're closer to 90 than we are to 180. So we don't want to be anywhere near 180, okay? We want to be at G, somewhere between 90 and 120. Make sense? An integer from 10 through 99 inclusive is to be chosen at random. What is the probability that the number chosen will have 0 as at least one digit? Okay. Right. So let's see. So we're taking the numbers all the way up to 99. Well, a lot of these beginning ones are going to have at least one digit being a 1. Oh, sorry, we needed one digit to be a 0. I see. So, well, there's probably only going to be maybe 10 of them. So, like, you've got 10, right? You've got 20, and 30, and 40, and 50, and 60, and 70, and 80, and 90, right? So, that is 9 items, right? That you can count 1 through 9 on the first digit. So there's 9 items there, okay? Out of, how many possible items are there? Well, we have to count from 10 through 99 inclusive, right? So an easy way to start is to go from 10 to 19 inclusive, right? So if we did that, it's equivalent of counting from 0 to 9. So that's actually 10 items, okay? Right, so let's see. Then we got to go to 29 and 39 and 49 and 59 and 69 and 79 and 89 and 99. So I'm sure there's an easier way to do this. Yeah, let's look at an algorithm here. So basically you can subtract these and then add 1. That's the algorithm for finding the difference between the distance between two numbers, right? So you get 89 and you add 1 and you get 90. The reason why you have to add 1, okay, is let's say we were going from the numbers 1 through, let's do it a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say we're going from 1 through 5. How many numbers is that? Well, it's clearly 5 numbers, right? But if I took the first and the last and subtracted them, I would get 4, which is 1 too shy. So I'd have to then add 1 to make it right. So there we've sort of come up with an algorithm, which is to take the last number, subtract the first, add 1, right? So that allows your counting to go smoothly. So anyway, we're at 9 over 90, which can be reduced, right? This is 9 over 9 times 10. 9 times 1 over 9 times 10. So the 9's cancel, you get 1/10. 12 by 16, what is the area of the circle? Okay, so the key trick here is to draw the following line. Now this line is relevant for both of these shapes. It is the diagonal for the rectangle. It's also the diameter for the circle. So a lot of times your goal with these type of questions is to unite the shapes in some way. And this is the perfect line to do that. So now we have to find out the length using these 12 and 16. You could use Pythagorean Theorem, right? And you can also check and see if it's a multiple of one of our principal special right triangles, also known as Pythagorean triples. Okay, so 3, 4, 5. Is it a multiple of 3, 4, 5? Well, to get it right, we'd have to multiply by 4 to get 12. So you multiply by 4 here, you get 16. Multiply by 4 here, you get 20. And it turns out that is a candidate, 12, 16, 20. Okay, so now we know the diameter of the circle is 20, which means that its radius would have to be 10. And since the formula calls for pi r squared, we just plug in 10, we get 100 pi. If log base a of x equals n and log base a of y equals p, then log base a of xy times 2 equals what? Okay. Well, let's see what we got here. So we can expand this using our log rules for expansion. So log base a of xy would be the same as log base a of x plus log base a of y. So multiplication there turns into an addition of the separate logs. So this would be n plus p. That's how that would translate. Notice how this parentheses closes. So that means that this 2 is outside of that log. So it's kind of like having a 2 over here. So the answer is E. Alright, for every positive 2-digit number, A, with units digit x and tens digit y, let B be the 2-digit number formed by reversing the digits of A. Which of the following expressions is equivalent to A minus B? Okay, so the easiest way to do this one is actually come up with numbers, right? So let's use the number 21, right? And that'll be our number A, right? So therefore, our tens digit would be 2, and our ones digit would be 1. Now if we switch the two numbers, we get 12, of course, reversing those digits. And that's supposed to be called B, right? And the question is asking which of the following is equivalent to A minus B. So in our case, A is 21 and B is 12. If we subtract them, we get 9. So now when we plug in our letters into here, we're supposed to get 9 as an answer, right? So 0, that one's out already. 9x, so x is 1 in our case, so 9 times 1 minus y. Y is 2. So 9 minus 2 is 7. That doesn't work because our target value is 9. Okay. 9y, so y is 2, so it's 9 times 2 minus x. X is 1. So 18 minus 1 is 17. Also, that's not equal to 9. So let's see. X minus y. So x minus y is 1 minus 2 is negative 1. 9 times negative 1 is negative 9. Getting warmer. This time it's the right way around. 2 minus 1 is 1 times 9 is 9. So it's the only one that works, and it is the answer. F of A equals this. What is f of A plus B? So we just have to plug in A plus B wherever we see our input value. So A plus B, quantity squared, minus 2. So this, of course, is a FOIL. Alright, so we have to do first, so get A squared, outer, AB, inner, another AB, and last, B squared. We still have the minus 2. So A squared plus 2AB plus B squared minus 2. In the complex numbers, where I squared is equal to minus 1, 1 over 1 plus I times 1 minus I over 1 minus I. What does this equal? Well, for starters, we can cancel these out and we get 1 over 1 plus I, but of course it can't be that easy, right? So instead, we should try multiplying it out. So on the top we get 1 minus I. On the bottom we have to FOIL. We get 1. The outer gives minus I. The inner gives plus I. And then the last gives minus I squared. Okay. Here the inner and outer cancel. Right? So we have 1 minus I over 1 minus, and here we see an I squared. And they told us up here that I squared is negative 1. So we can plug that in at that point. So we've got 1 minus I over 1 minus a negative 1 is plus 1, so 1 plus 1 is 2. So 1 minus I over 2, J. Amy's best marathon time decreased by 10%, and also then by 20%. So by what percent did it decrease altogether? So a 10% decrease is 0.9 as a multiplier. 20% decrease is 0.8. So we simply have to multiply those together. You get 0.72. All right, and keep in mind that this is corresponding to 72% on, and so therefore this corresponds to a 28% decrease. So that's answer choice A. The sum of an infinite geometric series with first term x and common ratio y is given by this. All right, so the sum equals x over 1 minus y. The sum of a given infinite geometric series is 200, so we can plug that in for sum. And the common ratio, which is represented by the letter y, that's equal to 0.15. So we can plug that in for y. And we still don't know x. What is the second term of the series? Okay, so that's kind of cruel of them to do, but they're not asking for x, they're asking for the second term. But anyway, we got to start by solving for x anyway. So we grab the calculator. 1 minus 0.15. We get that, okay. And then that we have to multiply with 200, okay, sort of a cross multiply. And x is going to equal 170, right? And a lot of people are going to choose this, but you have to be aware of the partial answer, because that's really representing the first term of the series. We're looking for the second term, so we have to apply the common difference of 0.15. So we have to times, right? Because geometric series we times by that value, and you get 25.5. How many different integer values of a satisfy this inequality, right? So one way to solve this is, well, we'd like to have the bottoms look the same, right? So let's see if there's a way we could do that. So if we multiply by 11 over 11 on this guy, and by 8 over 8 on this guy, then we'll have 8 over 88 less than, and of course, since we're multiplying by 1, we don't have to do anything to the middle. Okay? Something like this. Then, let's see, we can multiply, well, let me think for a moment. Actually, I went the wrong way here. So I'm actually going to start over. Yeah, what would be best is if we got the numerators to be the same. So let's do 2 over 2 here and 2 over 2 here, right? So we'd have 2 over 22 is less than 2 over a is less than 2 over 16. Let's see, this might be better. Right? Is this better? Okay, well, let me just see if I can finish this thing. So, alright. I'm canceling that as well. So, one thing you can do with this is you can flip both sides, right? But flipping both sides is the second thing that makes inequalities different from equations. Because if you flip both sides, you end up with a over 2, and you end up with 8 over 1. But the inequality sign actually switches, okay? And then you can switch this inequality sign and also flip this situation. Alright, so then we're here, right? And then from here we can multiply by 2 on each and every piece. Okay, so that cancels this 2 out and just leaves A in the center piece. Come on. Right, so we have then 22 is greater than A is greater than 16. So if you pancake this whole thing, it would be 16 less than A less than 22. So A has got to be between 16 and 22. So it could be 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Any of those will do. That's 5 items. In 3 fair coin tosses, where the 2 outcomes, heads or tails, are equally likely, what is the probability of obtaining exactly 2 heads? Alright, so the probability of exactly 2. So we have to use a binomial probability here, right? Which is a very long and annoying formula, but if you'd rather not use that formula, you can also write out the sample space. And since it's coin tosses, it's actually not that hard to do. So you can start with having all of the coin tosses coming up heads, and you can have heads, heads, tails, heads, tails, heads, heads, tails, tails, right? So those are all the possibilities with the heads in the leading position. Then you could go tails, heads, heads, tails, heads, tails, 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 heads, tails, tails, tails. So as you see, there's a total of 8 possibilities. And we want exactly 2 heads. So this has 2 heads, this has 2 heads, this has 2 heads. So that's 3 out of 8.